Welcome to the Hurst Trading Room. My name is David Hickson and this is a video update for the 15th of June 2015. Please make sure that you have read and understood these disclaimers before we take a look at the markets. Let's wrap up this video by taking a look at the euro to US dollar. Just quickly, you will know that in last week's video I spoke about the 80-day cycle trough which formed in the last week of May, and there have been 19 bars since that trough, so we are expecting the 20-day cycle trough to form now in the markets. It might have formed last week, perhaps on Friday. I expected price to come down to the FLD last week and to sort of track along it, and then we would get a C category interaction. So coming down to the FLD, which it did very nicely on Friday of last week, and over the weekend the FLD sort of jumped up again in another FLD spike, and so price has sort of accidentally discovered itself on the other side of the FLD, if you like, today on Monday. And if we zoom in, you can see that more clearly. There's the FLD spiking up over the weekend, on Sunday in fact. Price came down to the FLD on Friday, didn't quite touch it, and on Monday it's ended up on the other side. I would be expecting a C category interaction next, in other words a long interaction. Again, how can you get into that C category long trade? Well, one thing you could do is you could use the 10-day FLD, and here you can see price came into the bubble that forms between the 20-day and the 10-day FLD. This, strictly speaking, is the bubble over here. So price came into that bubble, and when it breaks out of it above the 10-day FLD, that would be a potential entry level. And in fact, that answers a question that somebody had about Hurst signals. Here you can see the euro US dollar for Hurst signals is that you consider a C category trade, and the entry level for that C category trade for Monday would be 113.232. And where is it getting that level from? It's getting that level from the 10-day FLD, because of course entering a C category trade at the level of the 10-day FLD is a part of the standard FLD trading strategy, if you like. I said that was going to be the end of the video, but in fact let's take a quick look at gold. Gold is quite interesting because similarly it isn't really quite doing what it should be doing. What I mean by that is here is the 80-day cycle trough, of course, or cycle peak. This is the inverted analysis. That's the 80-day cycle peak. Here is the 40-day cycle peak over there in the third week of May, and we are now expecting price to come up to this 20-week cycle peak. That 20-week cycle peak is expected towards the end of June, and so I am expecting price to come up towards that 20-week cycle peak. And of course, if we have a look at the detail and zoom in here a little bit, we're expecting price to cross up above the 20-day FLD. Now, do you notice that it in fact did that, but it did it over the weekend? Isn't that tricky? Okay, so without really moving at all, prices ended up over the 20-day FLD. That makes it a fairly difficult trade to enter. The actual crossing level would be, of course, the level at which the median price crossed. So we can very quickly take a look at median price. There's median price, which at the moment, and of course today's bar hasn't closed, so this is by no means a final level, but it's at about a level of 1181 at the moment. And so let's just see this trough here, this low in gold, I think was 1162. The crossing level, if it remains about 1181, gives us a projection up to what about 1200? Okay. So again, this was an entry that we couldn't make. Isn't it interesting how all these different markets are providing us with really challenging entries? We couldn't make this entry because price crossed the FLD over the weekend. So what could we do? Again, we could take a look at the 10-day FLD. That would be quite an advanced application. We could simply enter at the level of last week's high, which is somewhere over there. It's 1190 something. That wouldn't give us very much of a good profit margin, however, although we're certainly expecting price to come up a good bit to meet the 20-week cycle peak. Let's take a look at the inverted analysis for gold, or the non-inverted analysis for gold. the normal analysis for gold, which has the 20-week cycle trough over here in the middle of March, and it is indicating that the trough that formed in gold the Friday before last over here is the 80-day cycle trough. So that is very interesting, because that ties in very closely with our other analyses that we've been looking at this week, which is that cycle trough should be forming in markets around the world. There is commonality between gold and the stock markets, of course, as well as between currencies and stock markets, although to a lesser extent. But there certainly does seem to have been some commonality in these markets recently. And price didn't cross up above the FLD last week, because even in this analysis, if we zoom in, you can see how price came up towards the level of the FLD. It clearly found some resistance at the level of the FLD and tracked down below it, and now it has by default simply jumped over the FLD, not an interaction that we could easily trade. However, as mentioned, we could certainly have a look at the level of the 10-day FLD. There it is, and the level of the 10-day FLD is about over there, so price has already exceeded it. If price remains below that level today and into this week, then we could use the level of the 10-day FLD, we could use the level of today's high perhaps. We could find ways of getting into this long trade in gold, because it is bouncing out of an 80-day cycle trough according to this analysis. But let me finish this video. It's looking like the longest video I've ever recorded for the Hurst Trading Room. But let me just summarize the whole thing by saying that at the moment, in my opinion, the analysis in the markets, there is some uncertainty, but it's fairly good, clear analysis. We're expecting a trough of 40 days or perhaps 40 weeks to form in the markets, and that gives us a fairly good, clear, strong analysis. I'm not completely overwhelmed by analysis uncertainty. However, in all of the markets that we've looked at, except perhaps the euro, in all of the markets we've looked at today, it's been difficult to enter into this trade. And so perhaps that's the theme of this week's video, is that sometimes, even though the analysis is fairly clear and we can make clear trading decisions, I want to enter into this long trade. Sometimes the conditions aren't perfect. And that is the case at the moment, I believe, in the markets. I don't believe in jumping into trades. If the conditions aren't perfect, if I cannot find a good FLD level, then I don't enter into the trade. I might have missed an opportunity, but that's better than making a loss. Thank you very much for joining me in the Hurst Trading Room. I look forward to seeing you next time and wish you profitable trading.